Welcome to Imagine AI Live. I have a very special guest with us, John Rossman, author of Big Bet Leadership and former Amazon exec. John, how are you doing?
It's great to be back, year two, here at Imagine AI Live.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. You just took the stage. I want to first ask you about Amazon and Jeff Bezos. What's your best Jeff Bezos story?
Well, I open one of my books, The Amazon Way, with this story about, it was January 2003. We had launched the marketplace business the fall before, and we didn't have any more merchants to launch. And he, up at the S team, he goes, "John, how many merchants have we launched this year?" And I start to explain that we only had the apparel category open, we didn't have any more merchants. And he said, "The answer to that question begins with a number." And I was like, 6. And here's why. And he kind of went off, but it was a message to me, and it was a message to everyone, which is, you know, although your job title might be Director of Merchant Integration, I want you to think like an owner and run this business, and we have to go faster, and don't let org structure or being overly polite get in the way of getting uncommon results. And so it was a fantastic period at Amazon. It's when we were really crystallizing our leadership principles. It's when we were really figuring out, like, oh, we're not just a first-party retail company, we're a platform company, and this is the way a platform company builds and operates things. And I obviously took a whole lot out of there. And Big Bet Leadership, you know, it's been 20 years now since I've left Amazon, and I've gotten to appropriately and delicately take their principles, mechanisms, ways of thinking and acting, and put them into a lot of different contexts. Big Bet Leadership comes from the work I got to do at T-Mobile with the co-author Kevin McCaffrey, who ran new business incubation at T-Mobile, and we took a lot of the things from Amazon and some other places to really build an alternate playbook for T-Mobile in how to experiment and think big but work backwards from new businesses beyond kind of their traditional business line. What most really good business leaders miss is the fact that you tend to be rewarded through your career as being a great operator, right? You see a situation, you make a plan, you execute, you deliver. Well, experimentation, transformation, innovation is a completely different playbook. And they don't fundamentally understand the differences. Part of the problem is we use some terms that are similar between both our operating playbook and our transformation playbook. But we wrote Big Bet Leadership specifically to give senior executives and the teams that serve them actual, like, both principles and mechanisms for the job to be done. When the job is, how do I transform? How do I build new business models? And that's what Big Bet Leadership's about.
And so you've worked with and consulted with lots of companies in helping their leadership teams lead better.
That's right.
We're at an AI conference here. AI is improving its capabilities every day. How should leaders approach AI?
Well, I would say we wrap up the book with the statement that you should be an active skeptic, right? And both of those words are important. Active meaning you engage, you think big, you think about your customer, you identify friction, you identify new use cases, new value propositions, but then you test things out before you commit to them. That's what an active skeptic means. And that would be my advice to any leader is, don't wait until you start to see the decline in your business, in your customer satisfaction, in your churn, in your unit costs. You want to move early and have the best advantage. And the best advantage means you have some time to figure things out. So it's best done proactively when you have kind of tailwinds instead of headwinds.
Do you advise leaders to use ChatGPT, to use Gemini, and what are they prompting? What should they be? How should they be using these tools?
Yeah, so I think AI adoption happens in kind of two ways. From the bottom up, meaning, hey, we all figure out the right ways to use ChatGPT or an LLM in the work that we do today. but then top down also, which is to understand an enterprise, understand your customers, and build a portfolio of concepts that we persecute hard, and we work backwards to like, which of those should we actually continue into scale, keep testing, pull back on. And so true competitive advantage doesn't come from just the incremental little improvements that we can find with AI, but it truly comes from whether it's a new value proposition or a cost model innovation or an operating model transformation. It's the actual change, taking advantage of AI, but seeing it for business value and as a way to create a competitive moat.
And I talked to you briefly in the hallway earlier today, and you said about prompting, and there's a way to level up your prompting. There's good prompting and not so good prompting. Tell me more.
Well, so what we announced today was called the Big Bets system, and I announced it with your friend, Steve Metcalf. And what we've done, the insight I've come to is that if you combine great frameworks or distilled thinking with AI and highly engineered prompts and an expert who understands, like, here's the problem we're trying to solve, the results you get are not just stunningly fast, but they're stunningly correct and stunningly powerful. And that's what the Big Bet system is. It's to help senior executives answer hard problems like, how do we grow? How do we leverage? What is our AI strategy? How do we dramatically improve our cost model leveraging AI? And I think for hard problems, for simple tasks and simple situations, using ChatGPT with a good prompt, fantastic. But anyway, when we talk about wicked problems, right? Like truly multi-sided, non-obvious. Even the problem isn't obvious, let alone the solutions and the path to solutioning. Those are wicked problems, and those you have to go at it with a highly engineered process to do.
Did you create your own GPT with the system?
Well, we've been using things like ChatGPT Project and Notebook LM with distilled frameworks and IP and highly engineered prompts to create these customized LMs to help do a specific job. So we have a portfolio of these distilled LMs that help do the job that we outline in Big Bet Leadership of how to transform. And the results are stunning. There is a digestion process that you want to go through. And as I talked about today in my keynote, which is the biggest risks we have is how we make these types of high impact, high risk decisions. That's what a big bet is. And there's all types of biases and challenges that leaders face. There's short-termism, there's incrementalism, there's loss aversion, and as Warren Buffett frames the ABCs of corporate decay: arrogance, bureaucracy, and complacency. And we have to address those things while we're going through the strategy making process. Most consulting firms don't have the permission to do that. They don't work on a leadership approach. They work purely from an analytical kind of strategic approach. And so we come at it from a very synthesized manner of both helping the team and senior leadership prepare for these high stakes decisions, as well as help them in a variety of ways drive the analysis, the insights, the experimentation in order to have better information to make the decisions, but then be prepared to actually make the right decisions.
So in using your system, I feel like a lot of business owners, and especially at the enterprise level, they're worried about data and they're worried about security and safety. Are you worried about that? Should companies be worried about that, using these large language models?
I'm not an expert on the security, but in general, I would say no. And there's easy ways to kind of mask the stuff that you might be worried about. But I think that tends to be an excuse for just watching from the sideline and naysaying what is truly a better way to think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe with customer data, for sure.
For sure. Any PII data, for sure, I would be careful. Even company-sensitive information, but there's ways to mask that.
Yeah.
And so, a clever mind find ways to find the value while managing kind of the risk relative to that.
Yeah, because you've got to give the AI the context within which you're working and the problem set that you're facing. Could you give an example of a recent company you've worked with and like a problem you helped them overcome?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a number of mid-market companies in agriculture and manufacturing, like real down-to-earth businesses that are stuck in a kind of a low-growth mindset, and essentially their annual plan is a version of kind of copyright from last year, add 5%, and we're just going to try harder this year. Like that's a aspiration. That's not a strategy. And so what we work is to understand the market much deeper, buyer behaviors, customer churn, unit economics, value propositions, what their competition is doing, what adjacencies are doing, and build a portfolio of challenging concepts about like, here's how you could actually differentiate your business. Then what comes out of that is what we call moves of no regret. Like, yes, you should absolutely do this, right? Like things like, yes, you should absolutely have an account plan for your current customers and do a better job at selling in these new products. Those are moves of no regret. But then there's also a bunch of things that are truly like, more experimentation is necessary, because if you not just get it wrong, but there's oftentimes a little unlock. Like the idea is right, but there's a little unlock, either a feature or a pricing mechanism or your contract language, all those little things. And so you want to experiment on those a little further. So we work with them on kind of an experimentation plan, all very boxed in, that caps the downside risk. But because we've isolated exactly the problem we're solving for the customer and what we think the killer feature would be for it, we're able to create really targeted tests to test the things that like we're not quite positive yet. Then you can proceed in a much bolder manner because you actually have de-risked the concept. So those are the types of companies that I love working for, real clients, mid-market, that to say they're underserved by good advisors is an understatement. They are not served by good advisors today because the operating model of management consultancy doesn't work for them. We've reinvented the operating model and the value proposition, improving the type of advice that they get and concrete plans that they get in a package and in a model that can work for them.
Fascinating. I'd like to conclude here with just your thoughts and your feedback of how everything's going here at Imagine AI Live.
Well, you guys have made a big step on top of what was already an incredible program, and I think the thing I've noticed here today is like it's about business, and it's not just about kind of like, oh, this is cool, and look at all the little magic tricks and cool things we can do. It's like, how do we create business value? And I think that's the audience today is really thinking through, how do we get in the game? How do we do it smart? How do we build the capacity to actually rethink our fundamental business, leveraging AI? But my technique would be like, start with the customer, start with the end in mind, work backwards, have ambition, but calibrate that ambition. That's the story of Big Bet leadership, and that's what the Big Bet system does.
Well, thanks, John. What's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, John Rossman, or rossmanpartners.com.
Awesome. Great talking with you, and look forward to the next time.
Nice seeing you again, Chris. Thanks.
That's one.